The desert burned under a cruel sun. The ground cracked like broken glass, and the air shimmered with heat. An alien girl walked slowly, her legs trembling with weakness. She was young, her skin pale with dust, and her eyes filled with fear. Around her stumbled 3 small pets, creatures with soft fur and bright eyes that once danced with life. Now they could barely move. Their tongues hung dry from their mouths, their bodies thin and shaking. Every step was painful. The girl bent down, lifting one of the pets into her arms. Its heartbeat was faint, like a whisper. She held it close to her chest, but she had no water to give. The last drop in her flask had been finished a day ago. Since then, the sun had only grown harsher, and the sand stretched endlessly in every direction. Her people had abandoned this land long ago. They said nothing could live here anymore, not even the strongest of beasts. But the girl had stayed behind with her pets, too poor to follow the others, too attached to leave her small family behind. Now she regretted it. She could not save them. The pets stumbled and collapsed one by one. The girl dropped to her knees in the sand, her hands shaking as she tried to lift them again. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered. Her voice cracked, dry as the desert wind. Tears formed in her eyes, but even they were few. Her body had no water left to spare. Her gaze moved to the horizon. Nothing. No shade, no trees, no clouds. Only endless waves of sand. The silence was heavy, broken only by the weak cries of her pets. She pressed her forehead against the hot ground, ready to give up. Death was close. She could feel it in the stillness of the air. Then movement. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks. A figure walked in the distance, blurred by the heat. Tall, steady, carrying something over the shoulder. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and looked again. The figure was real. A human. Her heart raced. She had heard of humans before, strange beings from a distant world. Some said they were dangerous, others said they were saviors. But what was a human doing here in the dead desert? The human drew closer. His clothes were worn, his face tired, his lips cracked from thirst. He carried a small flask tied to his belt, swinging with every step. The girl's eyes locked onto it. Water. Precious, life-giving water. The human stopped a few feet away, staring at the girl and her dying pets. His eyes softened as he saw their condition. Slowly, he reached for the flask. The girl's body froze. Would he drink it all? Would he ignore her? Her heart pounded with fear and hope at the same time. The pets whimpered weakly, their tiny bodies shaking. The human knelt down, looking at them with something she had not seen in a long time: kindness. In the burning silence of the desert, one choice was about to change everything. The human held the flask in his hand, staring at the girl and her pets. The desert wind blew softly, carrying grains of hot sand around them. His throat burned with thirst, his lips cracked and bleeding, but he did not drink. Instead, he looked at the 3 small creatures lying weak on the ground. Their tiny chests rose and fell slowly, their eyes half closed as if life was slipping away. The alien girl hugged one of them tightly. Her hands trembled, and her eyes never left the flask. She wanted to beg, to scream for him to give the water, but her voice was gone. Only silence escaped her mouth. The human untied the flask. For a moment, he lifted it toward his lips. His body cried out for water, his stomach twisted with pain, but his eyes caught the girl's tear-streaked face. He lowered the flask again. Something inside him refused to let her suffer. He crouched down beside the first pet, gently lifting its head. The girl gasped, her hands clutching her chest, as he tilted the flask and let a single drop fall. The creature's tongue flicked weakly. Another drop followed, and then another. Slowly, the pet swallowed, its breathing growing stronger. The girl's eyes widened in shock. Her voice finally broke through. Why would you give them your water?" The human looked at her. His face was tired, his body weak, but his voice was steady. "Because they need it more than I do." She stared at him, speechless. No one she knew would ever have done such a thing. Her people valued strength, not mercy. To waste the last water on animals would be considered madness. Yet here the stranger was, a man from another world, saving the lives of her pets instead of himself. He moved to the second pet, carefully letting more drops fall into its mouth. The tiny creature licked the water eagerly, its body twitching back to life. The girl could hardly believe it. She felt warmth in her chest, a strange hope she thought she had lost forever. By the time he reached the third pet, his flask was almost empty. He tilted it carefully, making sure not a single drop was wasted. The last bit of water slid down into the creature's mouth. The flask made a hollow sound. It was dry now. The pets were breathing again. They lifted their heads slowly, weak but alive. The girl fell to her knees beside them, sobbing softly. She stroked their fur, her tears falling onto the sand. "Thank you, you saved them." But when she looked up, her heart froze. The human swayed on his knees, his face pale and lips turning blue. His hand dropped the empty flask into the sand. He had given everything. The girl rushed to his side, catching him before he fell. Her arms shook as she held him. "No, no, stay awake," she cried. The human's eyes fluttered open, barely. His voice was a whisper, so weak she almost missed it. "Life is worth more than my thirst." And with that, his head sank against her shoulder. The girl's arms tightened around the human as his body grew heavy. His skin was hot, yet his lips were cold and dry. She shook him gently, her voice breaking with panic. "Stay with me. Please, don't close your eyes." But his head rested limply against her shoulder, his breath shallow and weak. Her pets, though still fragile, stirred around her feet. They blinked slowly, their strength returning drop by drop from the water he had given them. The girl looked from them to the man in her arms, and her heart twisted with confusion. Why would anyone do this? Why would a stranger, a human no less, sacrifice his only water for creatures he didn't even know? She had grown up in a world where kindness was rare, where survival always came first, where no one gave without expecting something in return. Yet this man had given until nothing was left. For her pets. Tears burned her eyes. She pressed her forehead against his, whispering in disbelief, You're dying because of me." The human stirred faintly. His cracked lips parted, and he spoke in a voice no stronger than a breath. "Not because of you, because it was right." Her chest tightened. These words struck her deeper than the desert sun ever could. She had always been told humans were selfish, greedy beings who only thought of themselves. Yet here was proof of something different. Here was a man who had chosen life for others over his own thirst. She pulled back, staring at his face. The lines of exhaustion, the dirt from the journey, the pain in his eyes. Even in this broken state, there was a strange strength about him. He had no reason to care for her or her pets, and still he did. Her pets whimpered softly, circling closer to the human, as if they too understood the gift he had given. One of them even licked his hand, small tongue brushing against his dry skin. The girl wiped her tears, determination lighting in her eyes. She could not let him die, not after what he had done. Not after showing her a kindness greater than she had ever known. Her mind raced. Somewhere in this desert there had to be water. She remembered old stories, tales her elders once told, of a hidden oasis beyond the cliffs, a place abandoned long ago when the desert swallowed the rivers. Most had stopped believing it was real, but now she had no choice. She looked at the horizon. The cliffs were far, and the journey would be dangerous. She was weak, her pets weaker, and the human close to death. But if she stayed here, the desert would claim them all. She adjusted his weight on her shoulder, her small frame straining under his. "You saved my family," she whispered to him, voice steady despite the fear. "Now I will save you." The girl stood, her pets gathering at her side. The desert stretched endlessly, the sun blazing down. But for the first time in days, she felt something stronger than despair. She felt hope, born not from her own strength, but from the sacrifice of the human who lay unconscious in her arms. And with that, she began her march toward the unknown. The desert stretched endlessly as the alien girl dragged the human's weight across the burning sand. His arm hung over her shoulders, heavy as stone, but she did not let go. Every step sent pain shooting through her legs, yet she forced herself forward. The pets padded weakly around her feet, their tiny bodies still recovering from the water he had given. The human's face was pale. His lips were cracked, his breath shallow, his eyelids barely fluttering. She shook him softly as they walked. "Stay alive. Please stay alive," she whispered. He did not answer. The desert had taken too much from him already. The girl knew the truth. His kindness had come with a cost. He had given away his life for the sake of her pets. That sacrifice had saved them, but it had left him broken. Now the weight of his choice pressed on her heart heavier than the sun's heat. Her mind raced back to the stories of the oasis. She remembered her grandmother's voice, telling her about a hidden place where the earth still remembered water, where green plants grew and shade cooled the air. Most had dismissed it as a tale for children, a dream in a land of death. But she had nothing else to cling to. It was their only chance. The cliffs rose faintly in the distance, jagged shapes like teeth against the horizon. If the stories were true, the oasis was beyond them. But the distance was great, and the desert was merciless. She had no flask, no food, only a fading strength and her will to keep this human alive. The pets whimpered softly, walking close beside her legs as if they could sense her fear. She looked at them and then at the man. "You gave them life," she murmured, voice trembling. "Now I will give mine to save you." As the hours passed, the heat grew sharper, stabbing at her skin. The sand burned her feet through her worn shoes. Her vision blurred, her body swayed, yet she refused to fall. Each step was a battle, but the image of the oasis, cool water, shade, life, pushed her forward. Once, she stumbled, her knees crashing into the sand. The human slipped from her shoulder, landing heavily beside her. Panic surged through her. She scrambled to lift him again, her arms shaking with weakness. "No, no, I won't let you die here," she cried. With all her strength, she pulled him back up, staggering to her feet. The human's head rested against her neck. She felt his faint breath against her skin. So fragile she feared it might vanish at any moment. That fear lit a fire inside her. She tightened her grip and pushed forward again. The cliffs grew nearer. The sun began to sink slowly, painting the desert red. Shadows stretched across the sand, and with them came new dangers. Predators would soon emerge. The girl's heart pounded, but she kept walking. The price of kindness had been paid in blood and thirst. Now it was her turn to pay the price of loyalty. And she swore to herself that she would not stop. Not until she reached the oasis, or until her last breath was gone. The cliffs loomed larger with every painful step. Their jagged edges cut against the sky, dark and sharp, like guardians of something long forgotten. The alien girl's body trembled from exhaustion, her legs heavy, yet she did not stop. She carried the human across her shoulders, his weight pressing down, but her will kept her upright. Her pets followed close. They were still weak, stumbling now and then, but they stayed near her feet as if they understood the danger. Their wide eyes looked up at her, trusting her completely. She whispered to them, her voice soft, "Stay with me, little ones. Stay strong. We must reach the water." As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across the sand. The air cooled slightly, but the desert became no less dangerous. From the rocks came distant howls, sharp cries that made her heart freeze. Predators. The desert was never empty. Hunger always prowled when the light faded. The girl quickened her pace, her body screaming in protest. The human stirred faintly in her arms, his lips moving as if to speak, but no words came. His eyes fluttered, then closed again. She pressed her cheek to his temple. "Don't you dare leave me. Not after what you did," she whispered. A sudden sound split the silence. A growl low and deep. From the shadows, glowing eyes appeared. Long, thin bodies slithered out of the sand, creatures with sharp claws and mouths lined with fangs. Desert stalkers. They had caught the scent of weakness, and now they circled, tails lashing the ground. The pets whined, pressing close to her legs. The girl's chest tightened. She could not fight while carrying the human. She could barely stand. But if she left him, even for a moment, the predators would strike. Her mind raced. She picked up a sharp stone from the ground, holding it tightly in one hand. Her other arm clutched the human close. The stalkers hissed, their bodies swaying as they prepared to pounce. Then, a memory returned. Her grandmother's story of the oasis. She remembered the words, "The beasts fear the cliffs, for beyond them lies life, and life burns their hunger away." The girl's heart pounded. If she could reach the cliffs, if she could cross their boundary, the creatures would not follow. But the cliffs were still far, and the stalkers closed in quickly. She shouted, a raw sound tearing from her throat. With all her strength, she hurled the stone at the nearest predator. It struck its snout, making the beast screech and reel back. She seized the moment, pushing forward, stumbling through the sand with every ounce of energy left in her body. Her pets ran at her side, yipping weakly yet bravely. The stalkers followed, their snarls growing louder, but the girl refused to look back. The cliffs grew taller, closer, their shadow falling over her. At last, with a final desperate lunge, she crossed into their base. The predators halted at the edge, snarling, their glowing eyes furious. But they did not follow. The girl collapsed against the rocks, her chest heaving, the human still in her arms. She looked up at the towering cliffs, and for the first time she believed. The oasis was real. It had to be. The cliffs rose like walls of stone, their faces rough and sharp. The alien girl leaned against them, gasping for breath, the human still heavy across her shoulders. Her pets huddled close, trembling from exhaustion and fear. Behind them, the desert stalkers prowled, their glowing eyes fixed on her from the sand's edge. They hissed and snarled but did not dare cross the boundary of the cliffs. She looked upward. The path to the oasis would not be easy. It was said to lie beyond these rocks, hidden in a valley carved by time itself. But she could already feel the air shifting, the faint scent of dampness, of life. Hope sparked in her chest. She adjusted her grip on the human and began to climb through a narrow gap in the cliffs. Her feet scraped against the stone, her arms shook, but she pushed forward. The pets followed, squeezing through the cracks, their small paws scrabbling for grip. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The human stirred once, whispering something she could not understand, before falling still again. Her heart clenched in fear. She had to reach the water soon, or it would be too late. Then she heard it dripping, a faint sound at first, like music hidden in stone. Her eyes widened. Water. She moved faster, stumbling into a cavern where faint light shone through cracks above. A pool shimmered in the center, fed by a thin stream that trickled down the wall. Green moss clung to the edges, and cool air kissed her skin. It was real. The oasis existed. Her pets rushed forward, their tongues lapping eagerly at the pool. The girl lowered the human onto the ground, kneeling beside him. She cupped her hands, scooped the cool water, and brought it to his lips. But before she could give it, a deep growl echoed through the cavern. Her blood ran cold. From the shadows, a massive beast emerged. Its body was covered in thick scales, its jaw lined with jagged teeth. Its eyes glowed like fire, and its claws scraped sparks against the stone. The guardian of the oasis. The girl froze, shielding the human with her body. Her pets barked weakly, but their cries were too small against such a monster. The beast stepped closer, each movement shaking the ground. It opened its jaws wide, roaring, the sound thundering through the cavern. The girl's heart pounded. She had no weapon, no strength left to fight. She closed her eyes, ready to give her life if it meant protecting the human. Then movement. The human stirred. His hand reached weakly toward the ground, fingers curling around a broken shard of stone. His eyes opened, dim but burning with will. With a sudden burst of strength, he pushed himself up, placing his body in front of the girl. The beast lunged. The human met it head-on, swinging the stone with all his might. Claws slashed, jaws snapped. The cavern filled with the sound of battle. The girl screamed his name, clutching her pets close. Dust filled the air. The roars echoed, and then silence. The beast lay fallen, its body still. The human staggered forward, blood running from fresh wounds, before collapsing once more at the water's edge. The girl crawled to him, tears streaming. She cupped water in her hands, pressing it to his lips at last. "Drink," she whispered desperately. "Please live." The human's lips touched the water, and for a moment, the alien girl feared it was too late. His chest rose weakly, then stilled. She pressed her hands against his mouth, whispering, "Drink, please, don't leave me now." Slowly, his throat moved, swallowing the cool liquid. His breath returned, shallow but real. Relief washed over her like rain on dry sand. She scooped more water again and again, until his face regained a trace of color. His cracked lips softened, and his eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. The girl sobbed with joy, holding his head gently in her lap. "You saved them," she whispered, glancing at her pets curled nearby, drinking happily from the pool. "Now I saved you." The human's voice was low, broken but steady. "I thought I was finished." He looked at her, eyes full of something stronger than words. Gratitude, respect, a bond born in the harshest of places. "You gave everything," she said, her tears falling freely. "Even when you had nothing left. No one from my kind would have done this. Not for me, not for them." The human managed a faint smile. "Life is worth saving, no matter whose it is." His words sank into her heart like seeds finding soil. She had lived in a world where kindness was weakness, where compassion was ignored. But this human, this stranger, had shown her another way. Days passed in the hidden oasis. The girl nursed him back to strength, feeding him water and bits of food gathered from the plants that grew there. Slowly, his body healed, his strength returning. Her pets recovered fully, running and playing again, their joy filling the cavern with life. Together, they built a small shelter from stones and branches. They shared food, shared water, shared silence. And in that silence, something unspoken grew between them. Not just gratitude, not just survival, something deeper, a bond that felt unbreakable. One evening, as the sun cast golden light through the cracks in the cliffs, the human stood beside the pool. His reflection wavered in the water, his body still scarred from battle but alive. The girl stepped beside him, her pets curling at her feet. She looked at him, her voice soft but sure. "You gave your last water to save what I loved. I will never forget that. From now on, your life is my life too." The human turned to her. His eyes, once weary, now held a steady flame. "Then we walk forward together," he said. For the first time in her life, the girl felt she was not alone. The desert had nearly taken everything, but it had also given her something greater, a companion who valued life above himself. As the stars filled the sky, the two of them sat by the water, their pets resting peacefully between them. The desert was still vast, still dangerous, but together they were stronger. And from that day forward, their story would live on. A tale of thirst, sacrifice, and a bond that no desert could ever break.